Post-Denuclearization, North Korea. City GDP growth scenario. 16 major cities, road to $20,000 per capita GDP. Episode 45. Hello. Today, before examining GDP growth forecasts for major cities and per capita GDP scenarios following North Korea's denuclearization and the introduction of a market economy, let us first look at the big picture of North Korea's overall GDP outlook. Assuming that denuclearization begins in 2027, I have analyzed GDP scenarios for North Korea as a whole and for 16 major cities across three categories: baseline, optimistic, and pessimistic. I estimate the time required to achieve the target of a per capita GDP of $20,000 under each scenario and present key implications, lessons learned, and strategic directions for both North Korea as a whole and for each city. Creating the miracle on the Taedong River. North Korea's Workers' Party can do a market economy. First, we compare the current status overviews of the 16 cities under analysis and examine the GDP and GDP per capita status of each city, using 2027 as the baseline immediately following denuclearization. Next, we compare the year and time required to achieve a GDP per capita of $20,000 for each city. Under different scenarios, and estimate the GDP of each city 20 years after denuclearization, i.e. in 2047. Then, at that 20-year mark, we examine North Korea's total GDP, the contribution of each city, and the contributions of neighboring countries such as South Korea, China, the United States, Japan, and Russia, and analyze the growth drivers for major industrial sectors. Following this, we identify key milestones and lessons learned and derive short, medium, and long-term strategic directions. Finally, we summarize and clarify key figures and draw conclusions regarding growth strategies and prospects for the introduction of a market economy following North Korea's denuclearization. Now let us proceed step by step. First, we will compare the current status of 16 major cities in North Korea. We will start by looking at Pyongyang, Hamhung, Cheongjin, Nampo, Sinuiju, Wonsan, Haeju, and Kaesong. We will examine the population, GDP per capita baseline, and core growth assets for each city as of 2026. In terms of GDP per capita, Kaesong ranks highest at $4,100, followed by Pyongyang and Hamhung at $4,000. Nampo, Sinuiju, Wonsan, and Haeju are in the $3,000 range, while Cheongjin is the lowest at $2,500. Kaesong benefited from the immediate operation of the Kaesong Industrial Complex following denuclearization, while Pyongyang and Hamhung benefited from core growth assets in industries capable of relatively rapid recovery, such as IT, finance, tourism, chemicals, fertilizers, and fisheries. Cheongjin, however, is affected by issues that require a significant amount of time to recover, such as the steel, mineral, and port sectors. Next, we look at North Korea's second-tier cities, including Rason, Sariwon, Ganggi, Hisan, Dancheon, Suncheon, Deokcheon, and Huicheon. Surprisingly, despite being classified as second-tier cities, their GDP per capita actually surpasses that of first-tier cities. There are as many as 3 cities in the $5,000 range, ranging from the highest at $5,600 in Suncheon to $5,600 in Rason and $5,000 in Dancheon. Suncheon benefits greatly from the demand for cement, driven by urban expansion. Immediately following denuclearization, Rason benefits from import-export logistics and fisheries, and Dancheon is largely due to the commencement of magnesite and lead-zinc exports. Deokcheon benefits from increased truck demand due to the development and construction boom, as well as expanded coal production. Ganggi and Hisan have the lowest figures at $2,700 and $1,100. Respectively, Ganggi faces the challenge of a time-consuming transition to the civilian sector as a military-industrial zone, while Hisan has the weakness of lacking significant industries other than tourism. Secondly, assuming 2027 is the starting point for denuclearization, we examine the GDP baselines by city. The capital, Pyongyang, stands at $11.7 billion, which is overwhelmingly higher compared to other cities that fail to surpass the $1 billion mark. This clearly demonstrates the significant disparity in economic standards between Pyongyang and other provincial cities in North Korea, to the point where they are practically different countries. Only Danchan, Suncheon, Chongjin, and Hamhung show figures in the high $1 billion range. The status of GDP per capita in 2027, immediately following denuclearization, shows a somewhat different pattern. The national average GDP per capita is $1,100. Suncheon, Rason, and Danchan show figures in the $5,000 range, in that order, thanks to the cement, import-export logistics, and magnesite export sectors, which are responding quickly to the economic recovery following denuclearization. Pyongyang, Hamhung, Kaesong, and Deokcheon are in the $4,000 range, while Chongjin is $2,500 and Hisan is the lowest at $1,800, which is a result of the aforementioned causes for the lowest GDP. Third, let's look at the target year scenarios for achieving a per capita GDP of $20,000 by city. Based on the optimistic scenario, the three cities of Pyongyang, Wonsan, and Rason are projected to reach the $20,000 mark the fastest, taking 15 years. This is due to the influence of key growth engines such as IT, finance, high-tech manufacturing, and tourism in Pyongyang. Tourism is the primary reason for Wonsan's progress, and the impact of import-export logistics, rare earth minerals, and seafood exports is significant for Rason. Danchan, Suncheon, Deokcheon, Huicheon, Nampo, and Haiju follow between 16 and 18 years, while Hamhung, Chongjin, Sinuiju, Kaesong, Sariwon, and Hyesan are at the average level of 20 years. Ganggi is the only one that lags the longest at 25 years, due to the difficulty of converting its military industry to civilian use. The reason Ganggi takes as long as 60 years in the pessimistic scenario is the same. In a pessimistic scenario where reform and opening are implemented passively, it takes all cities over 40 years to achieve a per capita GDP of $20,000. In the basic scenario, Pyongyang and Rason are the fastest at 22 years, and Ganggi is the slowest at 35 years. Fourth, let's look at the GDP projections by city 20 years after denuclearization. Pyongyang is overwhelmingly high, at $250 billion under the optimistic scenario and $150 billion under the baseline scenario. Among other cities, based on the optimistic scenario, Kaesong, Suncheon, and Danchan are in the $50 billion range, while Chongjin, Rason, and Deokcheon fall slightly below $50 billion. Hisan is the lowest, in the $20 billion range. Fifth, we examine the contribution of each city to North Korea's total GDP 20 years after denuclearization. We start with a North Korean GDP of $43 billion in 2027. Immediately after denuclearization. 20 years later, North Korea's GDP is projected to reach $350 billion under the baseline scenario, $600 billion under the optimistic scenario, and $150 billion under the pessimistic scenario. Let's look at the top 8 cities for GDP contribution. Pyongyang accounts for 40–45% of the total GDP. Kaesong accounts for 13%. Serving as the single largest non-changing growth hub once the Kaesong Industrial Complex resumes operations. Chongjin and Danchan account for 9–10%, reflecting the effects of the East Sea industrial belt based on minerals and steel. Suncheon accounts for 9%, driven by the boom in cement demand. Rason accounts for 8%, demonstrating a high contribution relative to its scale as a logistics hub. The combined total of 16 cities accounts for approximately 70–75% of the total. Sixth, we examine the contribution of neighboring countries to North Korea's GDP 20 years after denuclearization. South Korea is the largest investment and technology partner, accounting for 40–50%. Its contributions are significant through the reopening and expansion of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, the connection of the Gyeonggi and Donghae Railway and road lines, direct power connection and provision of the Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund, technology transfer in the automotive, shipbuilding, and chemical sectors, and cooperation in tourism, agriculture, medical services, and education. Cities such as Kaesong, Wonsan, Haiju, Nampo, Deokyeon, and Sariwon primarily benefit from these efforts. China contributes 20–25% through cooperation in logistics, energy, and manufacturing. It contributes through the continued operation of Pier 1 at Racine Port, the opening of the new Yalu River Bridge, and its connection to Sinuiju, the provision of AIIB infrastructure loans, the linkage of the trade network of the three northeast provinces, with Dandong, and the handling of manufacturing, subcontracting, and EPC construction. Cities such as Rason, Sinuiju, Hyasan, Kangye, and Huichon primarily receive these benefits. The United States contributes 10–15% in the critical minerals, energy, and finance sectors. Contributions include inclusion in the IRA, 30D critical minerals supply chain, provision of DFC development finance, LNG exports, e.g. Cheniere Energy, the MP Materials Rare Earth Joint Venture, and technical support from USAID and USGS. Cities such as Danshan, Rason, Nampo, Chongjin, and Pyongyang primarily benefit from these contributions. Japan contributes 8–12% in sectors such as fisheries, shipbuilding, materials, and tourism. Contributions include serving as a seafood import hub in the East Sea, providing shipbuilding technology cooperation and classification society certification, purchasing lead, zinc, and indium in Danshan, establishing tourism routes in Wonsan and Chilbosan, and participating in JBIC infrastructure finance. Cities such as Wonsan, Sinpo, Danshan, Rason, and Chongjin are primarily affected. Russia contributes 8–10% in sectors such as energy, railways, and logistics. It contributes through the TSR-TKR railway connection Rajin Pier 3, the Gazprom pipeline connection to Rason, ISPO crude oil supply Rason-Chongjin, the opening of the Tumen River Bridge in 2026, and cooperation linked to the development of the Russian Far East. Cities such as Rason, Chongjin, Hyesan, and Kangye are mainly affected. Seventh, we analyze the growth drivers of North Korea's industrial sectors 20 years after denuclearization. The manufacturing and export processing sectors make the largest contribution, with $45 billion, and the major cities are Kaesong, Nampo, Haiju, Huichon, and Deokyeon. Next, the mining and materials sectors make a significant contribution, with $38 billion, and the major cities are Danshan, Chongjin, Rason, and Kangye. The energy and chemical sectors also make a significant contribution of $35 billion, with cities such as Suncheon, Nampo, Chongjin, Kangye, and Huichon. The logistics and transportation sector contributes $28 billion, the tourism and service sector contributes $22 billion, and the agriculture, fisheries, and food sector contributes $16 billion. Eighth, let us look at the key implications and lessons. 1. The Kaesong Industrial Complex is the shortest path for the transformation of the North Korean economy. Kaesong is the shortest route to monetization, combining existing infrastructure located just 70 kilometers from Seoul with the experience of South Korean companies. Restarting operations immediately upon a denuclearization agreement is the most powerful means of early foreign currency generation and a symbol of trust building. 2. Tourism is the fastest route for initial foreign currency earnings. Revenue is generated immediately upon a denuclearization agreement, even without infrastructure investment. If opened immediately in the order of Wonsan-Kalma completed, Pyongyang and Mount Kumgang, hundreds of millions of dollars annually can be secured within 1 to 2 years. 3. Rason and Danshan are key nodes in Northeast Asia for a supply chain decoupling from China. Rason, a logistics hub connecting the Trans-Siberian Railway TSR, and Danshan, the world's largest producer of magnesite and lead zinc, are sectors where Western capital will make investment decisions most quickly under the US IRA and EU CRMA. They need to be directly linked to the denuclearization negotiation package. 4. Energy supply is a prerequisite for all development. North Korea's 26% electricity access rate is a fundamental bottleneck that makes any industrial investment impossible. Energy must be the top priority in the denuclearization compensation package. Key tasks, such as direct connection to South Korea's electricity, Russian gas, and the Nampo LNG power plant must be accomplished. The following are the strategic directions and short-term, medium-term, and long-term roadmaps. In the short term, 0-5 years, we will realize the Kaesong Industrial Complex, Kumgangsan Tourism, the immediate reopening of Wonsan Galma, direct connection to Korea Electric Power Corporation KEPCO, supply of Russian LNG to Rason, reconnection of inter-Korean railways and roads on the Gyeonggui and Donghae lines, formation of an international exploration consortium for key minerals in Rason and Danshan, and the enactment of legislation for the economic compensation package for denuclearization. In the medium term, 5-15 years, we will realize the establishment of Hyundai oil refining and energy hubs in Rason, Nampo, and Cheongjin, the expansion of the Kaesong Industrial Complex Phases 2 and 3, the creation of a new special economic zone in Haeju, the full connection of the Trans-Korean Railway TKR and Trans-Siberian Railway TSR, the commencement of construction for the Pyongyang-Seoul high-speed railway, vertical integration of magnesite and graphite battery materials, and the completion of CNC conversion for Deakion automobiles and Huichan machine tools. The following are the strategic directions and roadmaps for the short, medium, and long term. Over the next 15 years, we will realize the transformation of Pyongyang into an IT and financial hub and a central city in Northeast Asia, the development of eco-farms in the West Sea of the Korean Peninsula, becoming a strong fisheries export nation in the East Sea, transitioning into an SMR and green hydrogen energy exporting nation, leading Kaesong and Rason to a per capita GDP of $20,000, and becoming a key node in the Northeast Asia supergrid. To summarize the key figures so far, assuming a denuclearization agreement is reached in 2027, targeting 16 cities, the combined GDP of these 16 cities is projected to reach $19.7 billion in 2027, accounting for approximately 45% of North Korea's total. This figure grows to $450 billion 20 years later, representing 70% of the total. Under the baseline scenario, Rason is the fastest to reach a monthly GDP of $20,000 in 22 years, while Gyeonggi is the slowest, taking up to 35 years. The city requiring the most investment is Pyongyang, with cumulative investment reaching $400 billion over 20 years. South Korea is expected to become the largest investor, accounting for 40-45% of the total. Finally, let us look at the conclusion. Denuclearization is a historic, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the transformation of the North Korean economy. The core message revealed by the analysis of 16 cities is clear. Immediately after a denuclearization agreement, the immediate reopening of the Kaesong Industrial Complex, Wonsan Galma Tourism, and Rason Logistics alone could generate billions of dollars in annual foreign currency revenue. If Danshan's magnesite, Rason's logistics, and Kaesong's manufacturing are combined, North Korea's total GDP could grow to 8 to 10 times its current level within 20 years. The key lies in a sophisticated design that involves preemptively building energy, transportation, and financial infrastructure and structurally linking the interests of South Korea, the United States, Russia, and China. On the day denuclearization is achieved, North Korea will become the fastest-growing economy in the world. Starting next time, we will cover the current status of North Korea by city and industry, as well as GDP growth scenarios, in detail. The purpose of our channel is consistently singular. It is to help shift the mindset of both the North Korean leadership and the people so that they can resolve to adopt a market economy and carry out denuclearization. Furthermore, we aim to organize the current status and issues and share ideas so that the outside world can refine strategies and plans in that direction to systematically assist North Korea's transition. While this is our primary, grand objective, I hope our channel can also be helpful in addressing smaller concerns, such as, what kind of business should we undertake in North Korea? Where in North Korea would be the best location for such a business? How should we prepare and where should we start to approach business in North Korea? The same applies to North Koreans. Our channel can help them gain insight into business in North Korea, seeing from the outside that there is a different approach than what is commonly perceived, or help them organize their thoughts in advance. realizing that their previous thinking stemmed from a lack of understanding of the region and that this is how things should be done. In any case, we will delve deep to the very end. We will examine deeply, broadly, and thoroughly, covering every nook and cranny. We would be grateful if you would continue to watch our channel with anticipation. If you resonate with the purpose of our channel, we would be very thankful if you could watch until the end if possible, even if the content is somewhat lacking or the lengthy explanations can be tiring, and if you could press subscribe and like. This is the first time I have made such a request. But being human, I am indeed thirsty for your interest, even though I promised to run this channel without any ulterior motives. Your active participation will help spread awareness of the channel faster, allowing word of it to reach the people of North Korea as well. Next time, we will see you with a story about Chongjin, North Korea. Thank you.